So we go from third intercostal space, right? And then usually there's a crossing vein around here. So, yeah. So we suture like tied with forceps and then divide, and so then open the pleura from here all the way down to about here until like second or third intercostal branch is seen. Then we'll put a full silk stitch to retract the pleura this way anteriorly, and then put a wet gauze to retract the lungs. So that's the setup. Then, so using cautery and also either carry clamp or in a small patient we usually use mayfly to dissect this way anterior until you see the part of the ascending aorta, and you see a part of the first branch. So that's important because you want to clamp between this and this, right? So between first and second branch. So this one is trying to be a bovine trunk, so it's almost same origin, but you can probably safely clamp here. Then do the same thing posteriorly, right? Dissect all the way. You can see the first branch. Then I put something right angle here to open up the angle between the duct and the aortic arch. So once we dissect here, make a hole, and you can cut adventitia here, because that's important because your cross clamp is coming very close to it, and you want to be able to sew this area. So those are the arch dissection. So once you're happy with the arch dissection, then you mobilize around the duct. Obviously, recurrent nerve is coming here, hugged around the duct, and then go up posteriorly. So this area you want to use the sternotomy scissors rather than cautery. Then here you can use the mixture or lower. I usually put this kind of behind and then between the intercostal branches to mobilize it, and if there's adventitia you can cut it with the scissors or cautery. So those should be done in sort of 15-20 minutes, if not shorter. Then give a heparin, so we give 100 per kilo, that should be enough. Then we'll go ahead and ligate PDA. So if you're happy with the dissection, you can do this, right? Just go around the duct. If you're not happy with dissection or a duct is huge, you can always do this exclusion technique that we use for the preemie duct, like that, and then you can go this way. So in that way, you don't need to go around the duct all the way if you're worried about injuring the back wall. Okay, can you tie that? Go ahead and tie. Okay, sorry. So when you're tying, it's very useful to have the assistant grabbing here adventitia towards you, so that you can see better. Obviously, you're not going to see this this much duct. You only see here. So I usually ligate the duct before I cross clamp. But if you're really worried about it, then you can cross clamp first. But just to minimize the cross clamp, I usually ligate before. So give a heparin and ligate the duct, then cross clamp. So this is very important. So this one, I usually put it like that, and then make sure this area is dissected well. If you have too much adventitia, you can't really see it. And go like this, and cross clamp. So this is the first branch. Obviously you're not going to see this well because it's from the side, but then you essentially cross clamp the vessels. A couple of things, right? So one, this angle, you can't go this much. So if this tip comes this, towards the arch, you can't really see it because your toe suture comes here. So make sure this tip is away from the suture line like this. You see the difference? The second thing is, so I usually clamp one clip and then pull this vessel down so that you have more play on this area. If this one's like this, you can pull down, right? And then that's going to be your tension on your anastomosis. So just do it one more time. So obviously you're going to clamp those two vessels. So just after the first branch, think about the angle when you do first click, right? So this one's away from this area. Click, then pull back there so that you have more room there. And I'm happy here. And then second basket clamp. So can you see it one time? Okay, so here, assuming you have an intercostal, so you want to push all intercostal is here. So put it very close to the duct and push down, right? Push down or intercostal and then clamp it. And almost always this tip towards this, and then when you cut it, you can kind of push it together. So once you're happy with the cross clamping, then I'm gonna go ahead. So where we cut is usually at the lower end of the ductal incision, right there. And I cut a little bit, make sure you are not exsanguinating, right? So either your cross clamp is not all the way across or ductal ligature is not all the way across, then you're going to have a lot of bleeding. So just cut 1/3 or so, make sure there's no ongoing bleeding, then transect. And here it's important to see how much ductal tissue left in here, and then if there is, you can always cut more until you have minimum residual ductal tissue. And then go ahead and do the same thing at the upper end of the duct, like that. And then this thing is always bulky, and then it's going to disturb your anastomosis, so I usually cut it like that. As long as it's safe, right? So, and then here you have a choice of oversewing this or leave it alone and do it later. I always do it later, as long as we are happy with this ligature. But if you're not sure about it, it looks like slipped off, then it's gonna be a big trouble. Then you have to oversew it first. But I usually do it later. Okay, so now, so this is ready in terms of ductal tissue. Then we're gonna go ahead with so here, make sure there's no ductal tissue. So it looks like there's some narrowing. We can cut it out. Then this is an extended portion, right? So we do extended end-to-end anastomosis. So this one's pure lesser curvature. So the worst thing you could do is to make it too posterior, right? To make everything very difficult. So before you cut, you want to kind of push the wall towards the direction you're going to cut. So in this case, pushed inferiorly so that you stabilize the scissors. Then cut it. Okay. grab here. There you go. Yeah. And then, so this one, I would say I went a little too posterior. So this is a plane, right? So I had to go back a little bit. Oops. So make sure you're not too posterior. Okay. So now, and then you see the distance, between the tip of the clamp to the end of this incision, whether or not it's safe to go more or less. So I would say you can go a little bit more. Maybe just go a little bit more. If you're really pushing, you can go a little bit more, but we're not going to push that much today. Okay, so then look at the length of your anastomosis. So it's going to be from here to there, and then it's going to be like this. So what we usually do is to extend sort of counter incision this way. And so this one you can extend as you go if it's if you need more length. I just stop there and then so chopped off the edge. This is optional. Oftentimes I don't cut it because it doesn't really matter. But I guess this 3D probably looks nicer if you cut the. There you go. And now it's pretty much ready to sew. Okay, so we're starting. So this is the toe stitch. We're starting one stitch away from the toe on the anterior side. Okay, and then now we'll go this way, right? Okay, so and then the first 3 stitches we usually use the backhand. So that's a toe stitch. Well, 1 stitch anterior. And without coming up, we just find the other side, so this is the counter incision, this is a toe stitch, so 1 stitch anterior, right? And then here on the toe stitch you want to advance on descending aorta. That's how you enlarge those areas or avoid the purse-string effect. So your suture has to be inside, so we're going posterior, so you have this and this, so this one has to stay posterior, otherwise. So this is very difficult stitch, usually most difficult stitch. So what we usually do is to go beyond go between the clamps. You see how it comes out between the clamp?
Mm-hmm.
So that's oftentimes it's the only way to take out the needle safely. And again, advance a little bit here to effectively enlarge this area, and then stay posterior. And this is the last stitch, first toe stitch. So again, usually the first 3 stitches, the backhand is much better. So this one angle is quite different. So I'm just sewing with the forehand. Okay, so which I usually do like 4 or 5 stitches before I switch to the other one. It's probably too deep. Okay. Yeah. Can switch this. So when to approximate is really up to you, but I usually go 4 or 5 stitches on this posterior side, and 1 or 2 more stitches on the anterior side, and then approximate it. So this one is sutures inside, so inside out on the descending, and right there. One more. Just make sure I'm not catching the suture. Okay. So now it's time to ask assistant to pull up and then push down. Okay. So you want to be absolutely certain you're not cutting the tissue, right? Because if it's cut, it's very difficult to fix, and then likely you're going to have some stenosis because you lose some posterior wall. So at this point, I'm just going to sew the whole back wall. So you can probably let go of this one. So if it's lined up in this point, you can do one bite, both target, or quick 2 bite, you have to decide. So one thing is used for that I learned from Glenn is that, so this side perpendicular bite to get the adventitia, and this side, it's hard to explain, but so go a little beyond and then kind of scratch the adventitia, go beyond, scratch the adventitia and take a stitch. So in that way, it's all imaginary because there's no adventitia, but bottom line is adventitia is the most important in terms of hemostasis. So that's why you want to incorporate that in all part of an aortic anastomosis. That's more important when you start doing the aortic arch reconstruction, like that. So just come back and then take it. Because otherwise, adventitia is usually retracted, right? Okay, you can let go. There we go. And then here, it's just the rest of the anastomosis, and you're not going to cause any stenosis, so you can go pretty fast. The first several bites is critical because that's where you have a narrowing. Oops. That's good. So okay. So we almost never cut the aortic arch, even though it's pretty long, but for the sake of time, that's pretty much. So you have a choice of cutting here. Usually we extend the descending aorta incision. Let's see how that's gonna. Okay. And we'll come up. So now all left is your anterior wall, which is pretty straightforward, right? Because you're already done with toe stitch. Just have to finish up here. So here, if it's lined up well, you should be able to do it one bite in most part. And at this point, I usually let the anesthesia know that taking out cross clamp in a few minutes. Usually they prepare phenylephrine and then some volume. Because obviously when you take a cross clamp off, they have transient hypotension, plus minus bleeding. So give them some time to prepare that. Okay, so we are pretty much done. So as I said, we almost never cut the arch end, but this one looks almost too long, so we're just gonna go ahead and cut it. But usual move is to extend this, right? Still have to extend a little bit. Just finish up here. So here, just like coronary anastomosis, it's useful to bring this suture towards this. It's very subtle, but it does open up this suture line quite a bit. You can see this, you have to walk in between those two clamps, so it's very difficult. And the one thing you can tell, so there's only two windows, so one is sewing from the patient left shoulder like this. So that's what I usually start the anastomosis on the toe stitch, and then to finish up, just sew from the patient leg. Just kind of look up the anastomosis. Okay, so for the sake of time, I'm just gonna finish here. Obviously, it's gonna be a huge bleeding here, but okay. So once we're ready, we'll just do de-airing, right? So so I just de-air from here, briefly clamp again, and briefly from here, not all the way, but then clamp again, and then I take this one out. And then it's up to you how confident you are. I usually don't tie it and just take it out, but if you're really worried about breaking a suture, you can make 2 knots. Make sure you're not breaking it, and then take a clamp off. Okay, so let's see. So at the end, you can see. Oops, sorry. This is extended anastomosis. So I don't think you can go this much. So if you go this much, that would be wonderful. But you see this type of oblique anastomosis, and then from here to there, you essentially enlarge the arch by putting this extended part. But as I said, I don't think we can go there. I never be able to enlarge to this point. But this is the idea of extended anastomosis.